We're here in the Microplastics Mayhem app, which is created in Thunkable. And let's take a quick look at what we have already. So we've got a home screen. This is just our main screen when you open the app. It opens up to a map. At this point, this is just a placeholder because we don't have the functionality, but eventually what we'd like to do is add posts to the map. So when people collect nurdles, they're going to create a post, and the post will be stored in the cloud, and then it will show up on a map so people could go look at where other people have collected nurdles. We're not going to do that in this tutorial, but that's something you could certainly do or add to it. Our sign-in screen is a simple sign-in screen where the user can either register if they're a new user or sign in with their email, a password, and a username. Everything in this particular app is being stored in Google Sheets. So there's a few different ways to store information, and a lot of people use the Firebase sign-in option in Thunkable. We chose to use the Google Sheet as a place to store user information as well as post information, and I'll show you that a little bit later. The user can also, once they've signed in, edit their profile, their username. They could create a short bio about themselves, where they're located in the world. The rank has to do with how many points they've gathered. So every time a user collects nurdles, they'll gain points, and that will bring them up in the rankings. And if you increase your rankings, you get to achieve a certain level, and you'll get a different avatar. So that will show up here. As I said, users can post where they're collecting nurdles. So they would add in a title, a description of where they are and what they're collecting. They can also take a picture and submit the post. In this screen is where you would see other people's posts. At this point, we've got everything as a list, and people can click on each item and learn more about it. Ultimately, again, we probably want to add the functionality where these posts could also be viewable on a map. So a person can visually just look at a map and maybe look at the area near them and find where other people have collected nurdles. And then the last screen is a leaderboard, and that's what the focus of this tutorial will be. Let me just quickly run this so you can kind of see. Let me go back to home. Okay, so we've got the main screen with the map, and as I said, this isn't really functional at this point. We've done navigation through the use of a drawer navigator, which is very simple to use, and I can show you how that's created. All of our different screens are there. We have the sign-in screen where you can register or sign in. Because I'm using stored variables, it doesn't quite work in the web viewer. I'm not going to demonstrate how that works, but basically you're going to register or sign in. So let's go from here straight to profile, where you can edit your profile, post a collection where you can post your nurdles, view the posts, and then you can click on any one of these. These are all samples, so I was taking pictures out my window, not actually on a beach, and you can go back and you can choose them. And then the final one is the leaderboard. This is empty at this point, and we're going to create a leaderboard screen where we can see who's collected the most nurdles. Now within Thunkable, I mentioned you can store your cloud data in different ways, and I chose to use Google Sheets. So here under my data sources, I've got my sheet. The sheet has two different sheets within it. One is for users, so collecting their email, username, their location in the world. Ranking has to do with the leaderboard. A bio, if you choose to put one in, your password, and points. This is all test data, so that's why they don't look really quite realistic. And then the second sheet is the posts. Username, the latitude and longitude is collected based upon your location. That's why all of these are located at my exact location, and they're not varying. But normally a user would be out at a beach or some location where they're collecting the nurdles. So it would track their location. You give it a title, description, and an image. And these are all stored using Cloudinary, which is a very easy online platform for storing images that you can use with Thunkable. And this does relate to, I've actually got this particular Google Sheet in my drive with the users and the posts. If you haven't already, it's very easy to connect a Google Sheet with Thunkable. So here I've got mine, but you could say a plus. If you've already connected something through Thunkable, it'll show up here, but you can go down here and create new, and the choices are create your own table, which is, this table is just within the app, so it's not really good for cloud data and sharing between users. We've also got Airtable, which is an online platform, so that would be an option. I chose Google Sheets, so once you choose it, you can find your particular Google Sheet by clicking here, and anything that you've created previously, you can just choose and it will get linked up. So very easy to use. We are going to go down to the leaderboard and create a new leaderboard for this app. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this menu item and add this to the drawer navigation. So what I'm going to do is just Command C to copy it, go to my leaderboard, Command V to paste it. It's very easy to copy and paste components within Thunkable. And under the blocks, now I've already got some code previously written for this particular screen, just to be able to cut out some of the coding within the app, but we will go over this. But the menu icon is what we've just added, so we're saying when the user clicks on that, we're going to, and then click on the actual screen leaderboard and this purple block, this toggle drawer menu. That's what's going to toggle the menu and pop it out, and this will now, this has been added to the menu for the entire app. So it's really easy to use the drawer navigation if you want to know how to do that. So I've got, this is the drawer navigation, and I've got all of my screens under it. To add it, you just go up under here, add a navigator, and they've got different options. I chose drawer navigator, but you can have a top or bottom or stack as the options. Let's now add some other components. I'm going to add a label, and I'm going to have it say leaderboard, and let's make the size bigger, and I'm going to make it italics and center it. And then the other thing I'm going to add is a list, and this is just going to be a simple list because I'm going to have to figure out who it is that's the top person based upon the number of points they have. So we're just going to use a simple list and do some kind of behind the scenes figuring out who's on top. All right, so we've got a leaderboard. Let's go to blocks. Okay, we just added this menu icon. I've got this bubble sort. This is going to be our function that actually sorts the users according to points. We're going to be looking at the users by their username and try to sort this list. So right now we've just got 3 as a sample set, but ultimately, you know, you're going to have a lot of users and they'll have different levels of points, so we want to put it in order from high to low. So 75,000 would be the top one, then 1,000, then 5. We'll get to that a little bit later to explain how the sorting works. And these particular variables are going to be used within this sorting. So we'll get to that a little bit later. So what we want to do initially when we open up our screen is that we want to create this leaderboard. Because right now we've got this, and really all we want is we want the username and the points. So kind of these 2 columns here that we want to put together in a new list within our app and then do the sorting. Let's make a new function, and I'm going to make leaderboard, and then within it I'm going to set, and I am going to use this user ID. So what are the user IDs? When we use a Google Sheet, we've got rows within the sheet. When Thunkable reads in a Google Sheet, it has to know what row it's on. Each row in a Google Sheet has this unique user ID, a row ID that we don't see, but it's kind of behind the scenes within Thunkable. If I go to data, we want to grab all of the row IDs. So once you've added a data source, it automatically is populated. So it knows that we have a data source called microplastics, which is our Google Sheet. And then it also knows we have those 2 different sheets within it. And we want to grab the users sheet and then all the different columns. So note that It's got this ID, email, username, location, rank, bio, password, and points. Remember, those are all of our columns, right? Same ones. So Thunkable knows to grab all the different columns, and note this ID is thrown in here. We don't have an ID column, so this is kind of an extra thing that Thunkable puts in there to keep track of which row it's on. So it gives it this unique ID number. We're going to grab all of these IDs and put them into a list. So our app variable user IDs is going to be a list of IDs. Now we've got this leader list that currently is empty. And every time we come in here, we want to make sure if it's been filled in, we want to reset it back to that empty list. So I'm also going to go back here and do set the leader list and go to lists, and we want to put it back to an empty list. I've done it here when I initialized it, but I want to do it again in case we're going back and forth between screens. And then I'm going to make a third list, which is going to be kind of our leader list, the final list that shows up, that's displayed. So let me make a new variable. And I'm going to call this final list. And make it an empty list. And let's duplicate this because we want both of them to be reset to our empty list. Now what I'm going to do is I want to go through each row of my Google Sheet, and I really don't need all of this information. I just need the username and I need the points. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to Control and grab a 4 for each item. We're going to say for each item J. You can change the name, but we'll just leave it at J. In the list, user IDs. So we're going to go to variables and grab user IDs. So what this allows you to do is for each J, if you have a list of items, it will go through each item one at a time. I want to grab, for the ID, I want to grab the whole row once at a time. So what I'm going to do is make another app variable, and I'm going to call it row object. We'll just make it a blank for now. Within our for loop, we're going to say set our row object to, and what we can do down here in our data sources is say get the row object. So this says get that whole row. For this ID, which we can't see visibly, grab that whole row, and that will become our row object. And then we can access each of the different columns. Get row object from in users from our Microplastic Mayhem sheet, and the variable we're going to use is J. All right, so remember each J is an item in my list of user IDs. Take that user ID, J, find it in our table, and give me the whole row back. So now I've got this thing called a row object. I want to put that into my leader list. So we've emptied out the list, and we're just going to rebuild it with just the user name and the points. So I'm going to go to list, and I'm going to say, let's say we want to insert. So in list, and the list that I'm going to insert it in is leader list. Insert at the last. So this is just means inserted at the end of the list. I want to create an object. Go to objects, create object, and I want to add 2 fields to it. So you have to click on this little blue icon, and you can add as many fields as you want. So we just need those 2. My first one's going to be username, and my second one's going to be points. And I need to create them by getting the information from my row object, right? So the row object knows all the different columns here, and I've got 2 columns I want, username and points. Back to objects, get the property, and I want to get the property username, and the object I want to get it from is row object. Okay, so I'm getting the property from the row, which relates back to this row. So I want the username column. And then I'm going to duplicate this, and the other column I want is points. So what we're really doing is grabbing a big row, and we're just pulling out the two pieces of information that we need and putting it into a smaller list. What we're going to have here is we'll have a list that will be Karen 1000, KML 5, testing 7500. Then what we need to do is we need to sort them, right? So we want to put them in a list from highest number of points to smallest. So this is where we'll look at this bubble sort. So I've collapsed it. I can expand my block. And let's just go through quickly. Bubble sort is just one of many algorithms that computer scientists use to sort lists. It's not one of the most efficient, but for our purposes, it will get the job done. So the way it works is we have two loops. We have this outer loop, which is we're using j as a variable. It goes from 1 to the length of the list. So this will just iterate through the list from the beginning to the end. Our inner loop is we're using the variable k, and this is going from 1 to the length of the list minus j. So it's really, the inner loop is taking care of everything up to j, so everything in front of it. And what we're going to do is sort everything in front of j. J will keep counting up by 1 until we get to the end of the list. So when we get to the end of the list, everything will be sorted because we're sorting everything in front. We've got this variable swapped here. And this is just tracking whether or not we swap anything through an iteration in the inner loop. If we get through the inner loop without swapping, it means that everything has been put into the correct order and we can break out of the loop. So what happens inside the inner loop is we're looking at each item and the one next to it. We've got the index of k, so at the kth index, and then we're comparing it to k plus 1. So we're looking at an item and the one right after it, and we're comparing their points if the points are greater than. We've added this little kind of strangeness here where we've had to add a 0. In Thunkable, properties are text-based, so our points are text, and you can't compare two text items. So by adding a 0 to it, it's converting points to a number, and then once we've converted it to a number, we can compare. So we're saying, is the number of points at the k index greater than the number of points at the k plus 1 index? If they're greater, we're going to swap them. So we set our variable swap to true, saying, yes, we've swapped something in this iteration. And then this is a standard way of swapping two items. We've got a variable temp, so we put the points at k into temp. We take the value at k plus 1 and put it into k. And then we take what we had moved up here into temp and put it at k plus 1. This is a very common way of swapping two items. So once we go through these three blocks, what was in k is now at k plus 1. What was in k plus 1 is now at k. And this is in our list. So we iterate through. If swapped is false, we can break out because that means that everything up to that point has already been put into the correct order. Otherwise, we just go through the entire loop from j to the end. Once we finish, the entire list should be sorted. So now we can collapse this again. So let's go back to the make leaderboard, and we need to call the bubble sort. So we've created our leaderboard. We call bubble sort, which will now put it in the correct order. It's actually going to be low to high. But note that this leader list is a bunch of objects, right? So it's an object with a username and points, and we want to turn this into text. We're going to have a second loop, and this one will just be our for each j in the list, and the list is going to be our leader list. And our final list variable here is the one that we're going to actually display. So this will be a text string that will have the username and their points. So we want to insert. Because this is actually from low to high, we're actually going to insert it in front. So now we'll have everything from high to low. In list, final list, we're going to insert at the first item. We want to display text, so we're going to use this join. And what we're going to do is insert the username of, and it's going to be of j, right? Because we're looping through this leader list, which is our group of objects. So we're going to get the property username, and then we're also going to get the points. But let's add in some space in here. So I'm going to add in this, which is going to be some spaces. Okay, so we'll have username, a few spaces, and their points. And we're inserting it at first, so they'll be, instead of low to high, they'll be high to low. And so what we're going to do is put it into our simple list, which is what we're actually showing in our user interface. So after that loop finishes, we're going to set the simple list text items to, and it's going to be this final list. Let's run this and see if this is actually going to be successful. Just do a web preview right here at the leaderboard. If you see testing 75,000, Karen 1,000, 𝗬𝗵𝗽𝗀. This looks a little gray to me, so I'm going to go back. Design. Sometimes Thunkable does this. The navigation shows up, so I'm just going to refresh. Let's do the color of this to be a darker color. Yeah, so it shows up a little more. And I might actually just go up to 18. And let's do that again, the web preview, and see how that looks. So we've got everything in order from high to low. So our leaderboard works.